And welcome to the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast with your host, Mike Sarraille, that's me. And I am joined by Glenn Cowan today, who's a good friend. No, he's not famous yet, is the key word, but he tries to stay under the radar.
Try to remain quiet, professional as best we've been taught, but it's, we'll see how that goes.
Well, you're failing on both fronts if that's quiet and professional.
Either of which I failed on the professional part.
Okay. Well, no, Glenn is a good buddy. I'm sure we'll get into how we met. He is Canadian, like Annika. You know Annika Newell as well.
Who?
Annika Newell.
Yep. Yeah, we've crossed paths.
Okay. So Glenn was Canadian Tier 1, a Tier 1 operator. Can I?
Yeah, you can. I think we're good. I'm far enough removed, I think, and doing my best to represent the community in a positive light. So yeah,
and that's the same thing I try to do for my respective community. But within Canada, they have a force known as Joint Task Force 2, also known as JTF2 for short. It is their version of American Tier 1 forces, which Delta Force and so on, and they are just as good, just as heroic, cut from the same cloth. I met them while serving in the military myself, and then Glenn and I met through mutual friends. But Glenn, let's dive in before we talk about your time in the military, and then especially you've crossed a domain. You're highly successful in one of the most elite forces in the world, and you're still crushing it now in the business world, having stood up what I like to describe as Canada's largest defense fund to date. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we have recently launched a venture capital fund that is Canada's first national security and critical infrastructure fund. And I use a lot of the parallels and analogies and the way that we would have approached a special operation in the way that I look at companies and invest and fundraise and really try to deploy and build companies, technologies, and capabilities that actually help our collective national defense and critical infrastructure security. So it's really rewarding because it's empowered me with another sense of mission where in many ways I feel that as a civilian outside of the military, we've had some successes where we're actually contributing to the collective national security of the United States and Canada in a way that I wasn't able to do while I was in service with a unit like you described.
So I'm going to assume In-Q-Tel was sort of the model you wanted to replicate for Canada?
Yeah,
and for those listening, can you explain what In-Q-Tel is?
So as we were fundraising, we would kind of describe ourselves as the In-Q-Tel of Canada. A little bit of a different business model. One of my co-GPs has a very close relationship with In-Q-Tel. I was at a conference last week, where we had great interactions with their senior management. They're actually in San Diego right now hosting their own conference where my business partner is attending as well. It's, they have a singular limited partner in the government agencies that they support. Our business model is a little bit different, but our focus and our thesis is aligned, and I think we're going to be doing some interesting things hopefully in the future with investors like In-Q-Tel and many others south of the border here in the U.S. that have just been amazing as we've really built an American network as well.
Let's dive into where you grew up, leading up to the time you joined the military, and then naturally I want to dive into your time with JTF2 and what you learned as a leader leading some of the most elite forces in the world. Yeah,
for sure. I grew up northeast of Toronto in a town called Markham, kind of typical suburban town to a big city. Very happy, sort of upper middle class family. My parents are awesome. My mother of three boys. I had two older brothers. My dad was a business mentor and inspiration for me on the business side. I come from a long line of family business enterprise. There's some cool stories behind some of the businesses that my family's kind of brought forward. My mom was the glue and the rock that kept our kind of family on even keel. Now my oldest brother, I love him to death. He's amazing. He's a one-eyed criminal defense lawyer turned stand-up comedian. My other brother is a surfer on a beach in Nosara, Costa Rica. And so, the running joke in my family growing up was, he's a very creative guy, my middle brother. He's a big ideas thinker. Some of the projects that you and I are talking about right now, I've bounced some ideas off him on how to kind of curate and innovate and sort of think really big. And I've taken a lot of inspiration from him. But the running joke in my family was, I was going to do something stupid. My oldest brother would defend me and get me out of trouble. And it would be a good enough story that my middle brother would make a movie about it. And kind of 2 out of 3 of those have kind of come true. That's kind of the way we grew up.
So typical household, 3 brothers beating the living crap out of each other?
Yeah, youngest of 3. There was a point in time when my parents said, you better be careful, Glenn's going to get bigger than you sometime. And that did happen. But we had the regular banter, and we'd our summers at our cottage up at the lake would always result in an annual trip to the hospital with a relatively catastrophic injury. Whether that was a fight where my middle brother grabbed the Dristan nasal spray bottle and just in a last-ditch effort before death jammed it into my oldest brother's good eye and squeezed the entire sort of bottle of nasal spray, rendering him completely blind, to fish hooks into every part of the body, literally and figuratively. You name it, we had those types of injuries that resulted in the annual hospital trips.
Back up. One brother took the eye of another brother.
Well, it's a crazy story. My oldest brother, and Scott, I love you, buddy, so I'm going to throw you under the bus here. He was born blinded in one eye, but his eye kind of functioned. But he could never see anything coming from the one angle, and he would tackle us and pin us down and put all his weight on our biceps, and then clear his throat and spit it into our mouth. And that was kind of the way he would get his revenge. And so, as he would hang the loogie out, my middle brother, in a last ditch effort of salvation, grabbed a
Afrin bottle.
We call it Dristan or whatever, and just jammed it, and it went right into his good eye, and he let go of the whole bottle. So we had to call poison control, and we didn't have an eye flush, so mom races him to the hospital. And this was a typical event at we had one good one a year while we were in the summer at the cottage, and that was one of them.
I always considered it preparation for special operations assessment and selection, because I was the youngest.
Being the youngest of brothers is good selection for sure.
My brother beat the living. I will say my brother and his friends.
Yeah.
Beat the living crap. It was not all totally undeserved.
Yeah.
I had quite a little mouth when I was a little kid. But he pushed me off the roof of one of our structures onto a wood pile.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember just messed me up. And then he tried to hush me up about it in pain. Yeah.
We would do the same, loosen the lug nut on the front wheel of a BMX bike as he goes off a jump and the wheel comes off mid-jump and took out all his front teeth. That was pretty normal. Yeah.
I think in today's day and age, parents would get called by, I don't know in Canada if you guys have child protective services, but
no,
it seems like you can't do that stuff anymore.
I'm hypersensitive to it now. When I have 2 girls, and when they fight, I'm all super sensitive. I'm like, are they okay? I'm like, yeah, they're fine. Think about what we did as a kid. I think they're just fine.
They're girls. So, at what point did you make the decision to go into the Canadian military?
This is an easy question, and I think like you, and I've been on a couple of podcasts with Mike and a bunch of other Tier 1 guys, from SEAL Team 6 and Delta and the STS and that community, and the common theme, I think there's something just in our DNA. I think there's a calling that we know very early that not only do we want to be in the military, but we want to be a special operator in the military, and I would almost partition those two out. Because there's something unique, I think, in the DNA of guys and girls like us that want to do this kind of stuff. For me, when I think I was 15, I went to France, and I did a Normandy battlefield tour. And I walked Juno Beach, where the Canadians stormed Normandy. I was so moved in the American military cemetery in Omaha. We were talking about this the other day. And I kind of promised myself, one, I'm going to do that. And if anything like this ever happens again, I want to be a part of it. And it was just a calling, and I just knew. I went to university in Montreal. I went to a university called McGill, which is I don't know how I got in there, but I got into McGill. It's a very good school. And I joined a reserve unit called the Black Watch, which is a Scottish Highland part-time reserve unit to help put myself through school. And very early on in there, I knew I needed to go to special operations. And I found myself...
Is the Black Watch infantry?
It's a light infantry unit, yeah. Light infantry. But it's part-time, a huge culture, Scottish Highland traditions. And, post 9/11, I'd done a component transfer to the regular force, and I was in the right time and place. And I was sent to a full-time light infantry battalion in the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. That was the NATO High Readiness Force for Canada. Immediately after 9/11, we were attached to the 1st of the 187 Brigade Combat Team, 101st Rakkasans, and we were in Afghanistan by January 2002. As a conventional platoon commander, as green behind the ears as you can get.
Did you go in as an officer, even during college?
Immediately, I did, and to this day, I keep kind of kicking myself for being an officer. Anyway, I say that half joking, half tongue-in-cheek, but there's some merit to it.
So the Black Watch, do you guys wear dresses?
Full kilts. Kilts, motherfucker.
Dresses.
Kilts, motherfucker.
Okay.
Bagpiped into battle, over the top, First World War, kilts.
I think in America we call them dresses, but...
Don't fight a guy in a kilt. There's the lesson to you.
There's
a good lesson.
There. So at what point... And I know, you mentioned we did a podcast together. That was one of the best podcasts I've ever done.
That was a great experience.
There will never be another podcast like that. And for the audience, we'll drop the link. It was a select season called Truth Plus Tribe in partnership with a great company, Truth Plus Media, owned by a gentleman named Brett Goldberg. And I'm forgetting the famous coach. He was the coach of the Denver Nuggets. Coach Carl, thank you in the audience, George Carl. But we had yourself representing Canada.
Yep.
Brent Tucker.
Brent Tucker,
a tier one. A tier one.
Did I say that? Sorry.
Army soldier.
Tier one Army soldier. My bad.
Rich Deviney.
Deviney.
Navy tier one soldier, and me. Jason McNevis, was he on?
No. Eric. Curly hair, wore a pink shirt. We slagged him for it.
Oh, yeah, Air Force Tier 1, and then I think we have Jason McNevis?
No.
J-Max? No?
No.
Okay.
And you?
Well, that was basically for the 9/11 20th anniversary, right after the withdrawal of Afghanistan. And it was 2 parts. Go listen to it. It was the reflections of soldiers that fought pretty much across the 20-year war, what they had learned, their thoughts.
It was the 10th anniversary of extortion as well.
It was the 10th anniversary of extortion 17.
Yeah.
You had talked about one of the soldiers lost during Operation Anaconda, I think that's correct, from Canada that still impacts you to this day, and you said drove you to step to the next level.
Yeah, he was an inspirational junior non-commissioned leader. His name was Marc Leger. He was not killed on Op Anaconda. He was killed by friendly fire on a training accident where a U.S. F-16 mistook our forces for enemy and engaged with, I think, a 500-pound GBU. 4 of our guys were killed. But Mark, I didn't know him well. He wasn't in my company. But he had a really profound impact on me as a very junior platoon commander, which is a pretty daunting... For NCOs that slag officers, if you flip the script a little bit, you don't know how nervous a new guy coming into an infantry battalion is. Like, it can be pretty daunting to try and stand up in front of a group of seasoned, hardened NCOs and present yourself with any kind of credibility, and kind of fake it till you make it. And Mark was just a really compassionate, good guy. And there was just a few times and a few instances where he said some really nice things to me, and he didn't have to, and it stuck with me. And the night he was killed, it was actually my range that night. So we were supposed to go out. His company had got a warning order for a mission, and they had to go out and zero their guns. So, their company, EXO, came across and said, hey, I got to take your range. And we kind of slagged and said, yeah, this is bullshit. We're losing our range to you guys. A little like intercompany sort of dynamics. And so I went to the gym, and I was just working out, and I was in there, and he was in there. And I think the last thing I said to him was, thanks for stealing our range. Have a good shoot.
You asshole.
Probably something like that. And I think there might have been a fist bump or something. And that was the last time we ever had an engagement. Like I said, I didn't know him well, but just an unbelievable, he was inspiring to me in the sense that he was a big dude, strong dude, an incredibly respected leader, but had compassion. And that he could fuck you up, but always had something compassionate and nice to say. He was a good man. And I just try to draw a little bit of inspiration from that. I wish I knew him better, because he's the kind of person I would have wanted to know better.
There's a few things I want to dissect, and in accordance with the podcast and sort of our pillars and our themes. You've served with some guys that are just lethal. Some of the most lethal people on this planet. In Devin.
Dev's pretty lethal. Yeah. You got to have Devin on this podcast. He'll blow your mind. Yeah.
We'll talk about him here in a little bit. But at risk of taking a lot of criticism, there's a lot of soft guys out there that are in the movies that, compared to the tier 1 guys, didn't do a whole lot. They served their country, and I'm not trying to degrade anyone's service, but they built this reputation, often like a big fish in a small pond, like the West Coast SEAL teams, where, they never ventured out to take it to the next level. And at the next level, I served in the West Coast SEAL teams. I love my time over there. I love the guys. But when I got to the tier 1, I truly understand what it meant to be the most lethal warrior. Not myself, but watching the guys that were. And you just said Mark could fuck anyone up. Mark was a fighter, but
he was. Now, this is when I was in a conventional infantry battalion.
I know. Yeah. And even there, and there's plenty of them, those dudes fought for a reason. They had a great amount of restraint. And the most lethal dudes I knew never told anyone. And they were empathetic, they were kind, they were respectful. And what was most admirable, and I'm thinking of so many guys right now where I watched them walk out of the bar where they knew it was going to be a bad situation. Not for them, for the other guy opening their mouths. Yeah. And they just left.
They left. Are we going to the bar fight?
I was in very few bar fights. In fact, I think my last scrap was outside this bar, and I woke up on the sidewalk. And that was my realization that my time was done.
I had a realization a couple of years ago, too, where I got jumped. I was with a couple of guys. We got jumped, and I was put in the hospital. And I was not in a good place mentally and whatnot, and it was a wake-up. But we met over a bar fight. See, this is the reason you don't have friends on the podcast that have some dirt on you. But we'll get to that story. The other thing you said is about being a brand new officer standing in front of a bunch of seasoned guys. And seasoned maybe you had 3 years in the military and they're at like 10 or 7. For those listening, I don't care what your rank is. I don't care if you went to college and all of a sudden come in as a general manager. You cannot rush credibility. Only action in time. And what I mean by action is consistency and following through on what you say you're going to do. That is the only way to build credibility in the eyes of your people. Yeah. I was never as old as my senior enlisted advisor, never had as many deployments as my guys had. And I think it's natural for everyone wants to rush credibility and trust. They want to rush those things, but the only true and tried way of doing it is just perform on a daily basis, and eventually it'll come. Yeah. Absolutely, and it's the proverbial chicken and egg, because you can't get the credibility until you're given the opportunity. But often as a young officer or a new officer, whether it's in a conventional platoon, you're showing up to a light infantry battalion, or in a tier 1 unit, you just haven't been given the opportunity. So you need that time to cut your teeth. And we all want to have the confidence, and we have egos and like narcissistic tendencies, and we're like invincible young men that just are fueled by testosterone, and we want to fight, but we also want to like lead well and do the right thing. And I mean, it took me a long time to realize one of the important lessons I learned as a troop commander, and that is you can't please everybody.
No.
I would deploy, we would have 4 team leaders, really awesome, sort of sergeant level team leaders running the fight. I mean, a troop commander has his role in the fight. Team leaders have their role in the fight. They're running the fight. And these are really opinionated alpha males with a lot of experience. And a lot of the time, they don't get along. And they have different opinions about how you should approach something. But ultimately, as the buck stops with you, so, you know, when push comes to shove, you're the one that says, hey, this is the direction we're going. Yeah. And I tried too hard for too long to make sure everyone was kind of happy, as opposed to being like, your idea is terrible, we're going with his idea, it's better, you're not, let's go. And it took me a little while to kind of understand the fact that my decision-making was going to leave 50% of the people kind of pissed off. And it was a really hard comfort to arrive at, and with my own confidence, to kind of hoist that aboard. And by the time I got to be a squadron commander, it was easy, because I had that confidence. And it took that many years to kind of build that many operations and deployments and interactions with different people's experience, and learning from, you know, your non-commissioned warriors that are actually the ones who will hold you up and make you successful or not successful based on sort of how you're able to build this team. But it's their team. As an officer, we were always just kind of passing through. They held the fort. They had the integrity of holding teams together for years, and we were just kind of renting the seat a little bit and passing through. And so it took me a while to understand that, and then pivot my leadership style to sort of appreciate that and understand that. And so I found myself starting to listen a whole lot more, and realizing that you can't please everybody, and then just be transparent and open about the context behind why you're making that decision. And it just comes down to, if you're going to make a decision that upsets someone, tell them the reason why you're doing it, give them the backstory, give them the backstop, give them the context. And 9 times out of 10 in my experience, they might not have liked your decision, but they would at least have an understanding as to why we were going in that certain direction.
Yeah. That's, again, you can't demand respect. You can only earn respect.
Oh, I failed as a troop commander so many times.
Everyone does. There's
it was humbling.
There's no playbook, man.
It was humbling.
There's no playbook, but, you know, as you dissect what it means to be a leader, not everyone's cut out to be a leader, because all eyes are on you. They're second-guessing every decision that you make. I mean, it is a brutal, brutal position. You have to become comfortable with almost being alone, in a sense. And people have asked me, like, deployed overseas, like, oh, you're surrounded by 40 of your brothers. I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Leadership is a lonely position.
But as a troop commander, even though I'm surrounded by them, you do have to segregate yourself in certain aspects to not compromise your ability to make the hard decisions. Now, I like to say this, and I love your opinion. I talk about decisions of what's best and what's right. And let me break that down. So let's say it is Canada during the winter. It's snowing. It's negative 30 out. The best decision, the one that will make you popular with the guys, is, hey guys, let's cancel training. Let's go to the bar. Let's drink. And the guys will love you from a popularity standpoint.
We don't drink in Canada.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, buddy.
No, I know what you're saying.
But the right one is, hey, we only have so many training evolutions before we go back overseas.
Yeah.
We may learn something during this training, which no one's going to be comfortable in negative 30. I don't care what gear you have. But we're going to go out, we're going to train hard, and we're going to take it seriously. Yep. And guys will eventually respect you for that decision 2 weeks, 1 month, 6 months down the line, and some, to your point, never will. But that's a you or that's a them problem.
The last training evolution of the night, when everyone thinks you're done, and you're going to start packing it up, and then you say, no, that wasn't good enough, run it again. And it's like, and you can just see, like,
fuck this guy.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is true.
Or really hard ones like we talked about yesterday. So we've been driving around Austin. We're filming this from Austin, and I've been on a bird scooter for a week. It's been awesome. But Mike and I have been driving around a little bit, and we talked about, should we go out and help? Is that our job? Are we here to kill bad guys? Are we here to help save our coalition forces? That discussion. That was a hard one, and that one had some moral and ethical implications into what is our role here? Do we go out in the middle of the daytime because we hear on the radio that not too far from us there's a contact and there's some conventional soldiers or another SF team getting brewed up? They've got QRF. Is inserting yourself into that fight going to cause more conflict or more confusion? Is it going to hurt your guys so that you can't go out that night and actually prosecute the task that you're asked to prosecute? I know it created discussions amongst sort of me and my peers of we're here to kill these bad guys. Well, no, we're here to kill all the bad guys and protect our guys. And it was just a very moral and ethical, and it was a very polarizing discussion sometimes.
And I'm not going to say there's a right or wrong answer.
There's not a right or wrong answer.
There's
not a right or wrong answer to it. And it was just, but again, one of those a leader getting thrust into making some pretty difficult decisions that were morally and ethically really challenging to make, because there's not really a right answer. There's kind of only a wrong answer, and it's which one of the wrong, which wrong,
less wrong,
which one is less wrong. And anyway, I found often some of the decisions that we were forced to make were exactly that. Which one is less wrong? Which one is going to suck less? Which one is the one you can sleep with or live with a little bit better than the alternative? Does that make sense?
It does, man. I'm not going to lie. There were definitely decisions that were decisions by consensus or the tribal council, which I'm fine with. Some decisions, I'm willing to advocate that I don't need to own it. If all the guys think this is the right decision, if I was somewhat in agreement, I was willing to make that decision in accordance with what they thought. There's a line there where when do you have to stand against the?
No. I'm glad you brought this up because I've built my business around this exact lesson that I pulled out of conducting operations in Afghanistan. And decision making comes down to time and opportunity, and risk and understanding risk. But really, time and opportunity is where the most important lesson that I've pulled into my business. We would, in our community, we always wanted to involve everybody in the plan. We wanted buy-in from the guys that were going to be doing the business. And if we had time and opportunity, we would spend 72 hours deliberately planning a very methodical mission. We would give as much time to the guys that had to go into the rooms and do the business to build the plan. There were some times when something would spike right away and there was no time to plan, and we had to say as a leader, this is the way we're doing it, shut up and get on the helicopter, get in the trucks, let's go. And I think when I apply that to my businesses now, time and opportunity. And again, in a non-war setting, we should think that we have a lot of time and opportunity, but business is competitive, business is ruthless. The clock is ticking, things need to happen. Things always happen slower than you want. And so I've really taken the concept of let's not rush to failure if we have time. Let's involve as many different stakeholders in the decision as we can. Let's go to committee. Let's take a vote. Let's do whatever we need to do to get the right plan. But at the end of the day, if there's no time, there's no democracy. It's an authoritarian one decision maker. The buck stops with me. Let's go.
So that goes to leadership styles, and there's not one leadership style. There's a time to be, let's say, an authoritarian, where time is not a variable you have. There is time to be, in a sense, a politician, where you want to hear everyone's viewpoint because you have plenty of time, that variable, and you've got the time to take in input for everyone and see what the best decision is for the organization, what the right decision is for the organization.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Especially within our line of work, sometimes you had months, if not weeks, to plan for certain operations time. Sometimes it was, we have them now.
Let's go.
You need to go get this guy.
Which were, honestly, we used to joke and we'd call that Navy SEAL battle procedure. Because
we're that good.
Yeah. No, it's like, like get in the truck, drive up, do it, and get out of there. Like, we would joke. It was pretty funny.
So, did you guys basically use us as like the model to be like?
Yeah, you guys are amazing, because SEALs are like nothing,
keep going.
Nothing bad ever happens in a SEAL community.
Keep going.
You guys can do no wrong. You know,
I'm liking this conversation.
Yeah, totally. You keep going.
You
keep going. You end up doing push-ups before a podcast and drinking a mimosa with the Navy SEALs. So
I won't put you in the spot. I know we've had some conversations about the SEAL community.
No.
Behind closed doors, you've gotten
the no. I mean, we honestly we did learn a lot from
U.S. Special Operations.
There's a not to say that my community there's a drastic difference between Canada and the U.S. Like we can.
One's awesome and one's not.
Yeah, and one wins gold medals at hockey and one doesn't, so we're good. But no, there is a not to say that we don't have a warrior ethos, but there is an aggression that I witnessed working alongside both Tier 1 Army guys and Tier 1 Navy guys. That I mean, we talked about it on the last podcast. It kind of led in many ways to a little bit of an imposter syndrome, which I'd say comfortably. We were very good at what we did, don't get me wrong, and I loved the community I came out of. But there was a desire to get in a scrap that you guys are truly the masters of. When I go around the world and I see what's happening geopolitically right now, we got Ukraine, we got a rising threats in China, we got a lot of technology kind of coming to the forefront in the venture scene. We know that we, as a Western democratic society, can position ourselves very well. And people start talking about the U.S. My response is never back an American into a corner, because you're going to come out swinging. And it's a little bit of a be careful what you wish for. And I have a perspective of being able to say that from a military side, a Tier 1 soft side, a business side. And it's you guys can be a ruthless adversary. And an amazing ally to take an objective with. Like, it's really, when the power of the American machine gets going, it's impressive. And I saw it the first time on Op Anaconda. We came in on the back end to do a little bit of a mop-up. On the tail end of Anaconda was called Harpoon. And it was the first time I saw the sheer shock and awe of the U.S. Air Force. As the Northern Alliance was pushing Al-Qaeda into sort of the Tora Bora Pass, the bunker buster munitions that were dropping 24/7 round the clock was like, again, like, not to quote W, but like shock and awe, man. Like, I think one of our guys was probably taking a shit on a hillside sometime, and the overpressure from a concussion knocked him back into his own, business. And it was hilarious. We all laughed at him, but it was shock and awe. I mean, and that's the only way to describe it. It was probably 2 kilometers away that a round impacted a target, and we were getting knocked over like we were getting hit with earthquakes. It was truly phenomenal. And likewise, on some of the missions we did, we Winchestered AC-130 gunships all the time. And those were not Canadian gunships. And we were not on the radio with American Air Force personnel that come in and check in and just be like, hey, y'all, tell me what you need down there, and we're going to make it happen. And it was just the most comforting voice we'd ever have on a radio. It was truly awe-inspiring in many regards.
There are critics of how much we spend discretionary funding on defense. But I assure you there's a reason, and those people are not complaining when we actually deploy it and put it into action.
We're seeing it right now. We're absolutely seeing it right now. I've built a venture capital fund, not to capitalize on this because we've been saying it for many years. War and defense spending is a big business, it's an ugly business, and it's a necessary business. We have in Canada, as an example, probably the most left-leaning liberal government. It's a minority government. I'm not getting political, but they are spending well in excess that we have seen in the past of a conservative majority government, because it's a necessity. And when we're not faced with some of the threats we're faced right now in the world, it can afford to become political. But when it becomes a necessity, it's a very nonpartisan discussion. We need this kit. We need to outfit our men and women appropriately. We need to put the infrastructure in place. And it's actually a really positive, nonpartisan view, which is completely counterculture, which is scary because it actually goes to show there's a serious existential threat right now that we've got to take pretty seriously.
It's crazy that people will say that war is not a necessary thing. It's almost like saying evil will one day not exist on this earth. Evil will always exist. There will always be a need. We will always be at war with some form of evil somewhere in the world. Right now, for the last 20 years, it was international terrorism, which still exists.
Yep.
And right now, it's the aggression of Russia against the Ukraine.
And I would add the third most significant and biggest threat is a rising China that is going to challenge the United States for global hegemony, global dominance. Hegemony? I can't remember. Whatever. We got it. And we're going to see. Make no mistake, what's playing out in Ukraine and our responses as a Western democratic society
is a pre-game for.
If you don't think the Chinese are sitting back and watching that response in relation to what they might do in Taiwan, you're very naive. You're very naive. And this it's a very scary discussion, and it's one that we have to take very seriously. And I've been involved, again, as a civilian. I've been behind probably more no foreign close hold discussions as a civvy than I was as a Tier 1 squadron commander.
What year did you come into the military?
98.
Same year I came into the U.S. military. Yeah. It's funny, because in that era prior to 9/11, we were studying Russian armor.
Yeah.
We were preparing for the next war with Russia.
Yeah.
It is amazingly, it is astonishing how bad they are. It is, for so long we thought the Russian military was so much more advanced and competent. It's comedic how bad they are.
Is it that, or is it just show that one guy with a Javelin missile can stop a 40-mile-long T-72 column? Because it's insane. And as I told you, we got a company that we're working with right now that literally has a Harry Potter invisibility cloak. And against a T-80 thermal sight, a Javelin gunner or a dude with a .338 or a 50 cal rifle is invisible, and they will wreak havoc on an armored column. It's mind-blowing. So is it that, or is it tactics have changed? It's not World War II tank-on-tank warfare. Like, I don't know the right answer to that, but what's happening in Ukraine is giving us a little bit of a picture as to what the future of warfare looks like.
There is a component that, hey, I would never wish my son or daughter go to war. I would never wish that on anyone's son or daughter. I know you and I didn't mind that, and that's what we in a sense signed up for, and we were prepared for it, and we knew the outcomes, we knew the consequences. But there is something to say how good the U.S., the British, the Canadians, the Australians have gotten over the last 20 years, how good they have gotten at conflicts, of fighting these conflicts, from not only the tactics to the logistics, to the evolution in technology and in equipment. I mean, we have a lot of corporate knowledge now that the Russians and Chinese just don't have. Yeah. They don't have the iterations. It comes down to iterations.
So 100% agree, but I will play devil's advocate to that too. While we were doing that and getting really good, notwithstanding the Russians, but the Chinese weren't doing that. Do you know what they were doing?
Buying everything inside.
They were building the 1,000 Talents program. They were penetrating every Fortune 500 company in the U.S. with insiders that are stealing intellectual property. And we know that to be true. They're not stupid. They are moving towards economic warfare, intellectual property theft type warfare, cyber warfare, data privacy warfare. Future war is going to play out very differently. And we've had a great discussion. I met for a quick bite to eat the other night a senior NCO from Army Tier 1 unit in Fort Bragg. And we had that discussion of were we really at war in the last 20 years? Or did we just, deploy and conduct really high-speed Tier 1 type direct action targeting missions where we were not fighting a near-peer adversary? And what we're seeing right now is fighting a near-peer adversary on a scale of war.
Is a lot different. I'll give you that.
And I don't want to say that we weren't in combat and we weren't engaged in a conflict, but it's led me to kind of start thinking about what is actually playing out now? What does the next conflict look like? And I think if we start drawing some of those lessons that we've learned out of Iraq and Afghanistan and try to apply it to an armored column, we might want to start rethinking how we're doing it, because it's a completely different beast, it's a completely different enemy, it's a completely different target set. Now, I backstop that with the fact that we've got really incredible guys and girls, really smart. You put some cool stuff into their hands, and they're going to figure out how to win with it. And so that I'm very confident in that what we put forward in the next fight is going to do just as well as some of our forces did kind of collectively over the last 20 years in the global war on terror.
Well, we're going to take a mid-roll break here, but before we do, we ask a few key questions. First off, biggest regret of your life to date?
Oh, man.
Being born Canadian?
I'm living it right now. I might actually keep that one to myself, but I'm living it.
Better question for another time?
No, I think not being as honest. I think I've learned a lot in the past year, and transparency and honesty and integrity, and learning how to live in a post
screw up
sort of civilian way. It's just been really interesting. But I think biggest regret of my life as a theme would be probably at times misrepresenting who I am, or trying to not call it as I see it, as clearly and as honestly and as transparently as I probably should have. And there's many examples. So if we were to put them under a theme, that would be it. Transparency, integrity, and honesty, and defaulting to a fear-based sense of decision-making as opposed to making decisions from the heart.
That's probably one of the most honest answers we've had. Hey, everyone puts their best face forward, their best public image forward. Everyone has a lapse in integrity. Everyone has a lapse in honesty. That is the truth. That right there is the truth. But people that try to play the game of like, well, I will never tell a lie. To me, I'm like, that's bullshit. That is bullshit.
I have learned this year that in the last few years, fear is the opposite of love. You can't go wrong if you lead with love.
That's a great one.
And you literally, if you tell the truth and lead with love, you can't go wrong. There is no wrong answer. And I've really have done a lot of self-reflection and evaluation on a lot of those things. And fear conjures up ego, selfishness, fear, anxiety, depression, and fear is the opposite of love. So lead with love, and you're probably going to take your life decisions, friendships, relationships
to another level
in the direction that is just good for everybody.
Great answer again. Hardest decision that you've ever had to make?
I worked for a commander, and I use this line a lot, and I kind of tongue-in-cheek, but in the decision to whether or not we had to prosecute a target and kill a guy, it was a harder decision as to whether or not we were going to put onions on our cheeseburger. That's how clear the decision was. And I use that kind of as a tongue-in-cheek sort of answer when I think about this decision. Hardest decision I had to make? Probably putting myself in a position of significant vulnerability over an issue of integrity. And I'll leave it at that.
Love it. Love it. Okay, we're going to take about a 3-minute break, and we will be right back with Glenn Cowan, former JTF2 operator and founder of ONE9, the largest defense fund in Canada. We are back with Glenn Cowan, former JTF2 operator. If you don't know what that is, it's in Canada. I don't think anyone cares. I probably just upset our whole men's journal.
It's a really good hockey team that does some special operations sometimes.
For Canada. If there are any Canadians in the bar, I apologize up front. You guys are good to go. I just give Glenn, it's a healthy rivalry.
It's good.
Well,
it's good.
So in all,
the most bloody game of hockey that I've ever witnessed or seen or heard about was a ball hockey game between my community and a community at Fort Bragg. And it was probably the most bloody game of ball hockey I've ever seen. It was awesome.
Who wins in the U.S.-Canada hockey? That's how closely I follow hockey.
Canadian women's hockey is on the rise. I'm the proud hockey dad of 2 young girls that watching the rise of women's hockey and the rivalry in sports that is taking place now between Canada women's hockey and American women's hockey is unbelievable. For anyone who's a sports fan, if you're not following that rivalry, it is probably one of the best ones. It is amazing hockey. It is ruthless. It is brutal. It is cutthroat. And it's going all the way down to 10 years old. These girls go into the rink. They've got their stuffies under their arm. They're wearing their little Uggs, their little tracksuits. They got their bunnies. And then they come out and they go on the ice and they kill each other. And then
just shoulder checks, laying
They come back
each other
into
out.
the locker room. They paint whiskers. And then they get their bunnies and they go for a play date. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen. And when they're on the ice, I shit you not, you would think you're watching like Div 1 women's hockey. It's unbelievable level of competition. I'm so impressed by seeing young girls be empowered and literally get on the ice and leave it all out there. It is a really
a lot of the
awesome,
Canadian universities, do they now have women's hockey teams where they're given scholarships?
Canadian women's hockey in the universities is a great caliber of hockey. The reality of, again, the Canadian-American dynamic to which the goal, if you want to say goal, or the highest level that our girls can compete at outside of Olympic national team level would be to be drafted or given a scholarship to a Div 1 American school. And that is kind of where these girls, even at 10 and 12, are starting to be recruited for and groomed into some of these roles. It's something else. And it's the mom show. Men are not allowed in the locker rooms, which I think is amazing. Even from sort of 7 years old and up, dads aren't allowed in. So it's the mom show, and it's the den moms that run the hockey for these girls, and they put so much into it, and it's really incredible to see.
I have no doubt.
Sorry, that's my hockey plug.
No, I have no doubt. Having worked out with Annika, I was in pain for a week and a half. Having worked out with Tim Kennedy, it was like that good soreness, like the delayed onset soreness, whatever it's called, DOMS.
Yep.
I felt fine after a few days. Annika messed me up, but I haven't run around a track in 10 plus years.
Just so I've had some great discussions with Annika. I think there's some business synergies that some of the things that we're building from a technology perspective for human performance can really help her with. She's a Team Canada track and field athlete. She's a pole vaulter. I mean, I didn't work out with her. We've just had a couple of conversations about how we can leverage human performance technologies to maybe help her podium in Paris in 2024. But yeah, no, I don't want to work out with her.
No.
I don't want to work out with Tim Kennedy either. I'd bite his ankles or something.
He is a beast. He and his whole crew are a beast. I'll give him that, man. So I give you a hard time. I give Canada a hard time. I love Canada.
It's good.
I think it's worth mentioning that every 11 November, which we in America refer to as Veterans Day, which, let's be honest, to about 95% of Americans is just another holiday off, is called Remembrance Day.
Correct.
In Canada.
Yep.
And I actually head up to Ottawa, which again I refer to as your Washington, D.C., where the War Memorial is, where your Parliament is.
Yep. It's called the capital city of a G7 country, but thanks.
There you go. I'm educating some people. Yeah. Not many people can name the capital of Canada, but I've spent most of my November 11th in Ottawa since 2014, which is when we
met at a bar on Remembrance Day, which is kind of what you do. We collectively really celebrate our veterans. And I mean, yes, I'm a veteran, but I mean like our veterans. I mean like the generation of men and women that fought in World War I and World War II, and the Korean War. And that's really, it's a statutory holiday, but the country stops at 11/11, moment of silence, and in Ottawa, right in the downtown core, is the National War Memorial. There is a massive parade. Probably 100,000 people attend in non-COVID times anyway. And there's an awesome little pub right beside the National War Memorial. And my friends, colleagues, peers, folks from my community kind of migrate and take over that pub. And it's sort of as soon as the 21 gun salute stops post-armistice and the laying of the wreaths start, so does the drinking. And it's a really great time to break bread with warriors. In the post-Afghan sort of conflict, we pay a lot of respect very early on to our friends and colleagues that we lost in that war. And it's a solemn day, but it's also a bit of a celebration. And so we really celebrate our war dead because it affords us the ability to live in the society we live in. And it's awesome. So we met at the bar on Remembrance Day in 2014? 2014. Magic Mike came up to Canada.
Hold on.
So
now a mutual friend of ours who doesn't need to be named.
Yeah, he's still serving. He's a good. I actually ran into him in an Easter egg hunt the other day.
Love him.
He's
Love
great.
him, dude.
Yeah, no, we like, and he was looking good. He's wearing aviators, slick back hair, and our daughters were searching for Easter eggs in the park, and I hadn't seen him in years. I told him I was coming down here to hang out with Sarraille, and he just shook his head. And he's like, "Oh fuck, boys!" Like,
and to play true to the stereotype, his accent is bad.
He's not French Canadian, but he's got the
good accent. But he convinced me when we were both serving together to come up to Ottawa. So I booked flights. He's like, "You got to wear your uniform."
Yeah.
And I kept
on Remembrance Day, wear your uniform.
I kept pushing back because that meant I would have to shave. And I caved to him. He's like, "Just wear your uniform. Trust me." Because I'm freshly divorced.
Of which none of us wear a uniform on Remembrance Day.
In our community, I didn't even have a retirement ceremony. They're like, "Hey, let's do your retirement ceremony." I'm like, "No, I'll be at a bar. Just bring my paperwork." And that's what we did. But
yeah. So we met. You and I hit it off, I think, at the bar. We got along pretty well.
And you were in uniform.
I was in uniform.
In the morning.
I was. I think
we started drinking at what, like 9 a.m.?
Probably about 9 a.m. Yeah. On that day, I kind of gravitate towards Guinness. I don't know why. But I think I took my kids home. I think they were at the ceremony with me. I took them home. I got out of uniform, and I came back to the bar. And again, it's probably 11 o'clock is the ceremony time, but probably say 1 o'clock. Everyone's kind of feeling no pain by 1 o'clock. It's a lot of bro hugs, a lot of high fives, a lot of like dropped pint glasses, and in a weird way, it's kind of one of my favorite days of the year. It's impacted me more recently as I've reflected more and gotten smarter about things. I find it more of an emotional day. I had one of the most impactful Remembrance Days last year alone, and it was really impactful. But the year we met,
oh boy,
oh fuck, are we gonna? Okay, we'll. I'll preface
my kids listen to this. So.
I'll preface this by saying I won't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Leading up to that Remembrance Day, there had been a spate of stolen valor social media posts
in Canada,
and even that morning there was a couple.
And explain what stolen valor is.
Stolen valor is
basically people claiming medals that they never earned or combat that they never saw.
Yeah, but we even saw like non-service people that have never served wearing like full airborne regiment regalia and like maroon berets, and like it honestly looked like you kind of assembled a costume to misrepresent military service for your own personal gain. I don't know what, going to Starbucks and have them buy you a coffee or thank you for your service or whatever. Who knows what, or just their own delusional sort of self-aggrandization. There had been a lot of that leading up to that Remembrance Day. And so here, Magic Mike, as he became known after this day, shows up to the bar wearing Navy SEAL dress blues. Is that what you call them?
They're Navy dress blues.
Dress blues. Navy dress blues. And Americans, unlike in Canada, like, you get a medal if you can do 20 push-ups. So, like,
not quite, my friend, but yes.
We hold our honors and awards to a very high standard, whereas, you know, yeah, you can run a mile in 8 minutes, you get a medal, son. And so Mike, being fit, you know, has an astronomical amount of medals and ribbons and just shit that he, you know, is wearing on his uniform.
That I probably didn't earn.
I don't know. I think you can do 20 push-ups. I think you earned it. As the day goes on, you know, the ties become looser, the shirts unbutton a little bit. The party ended up gravitating towards one of our, we call them, you probably call them legions.
We called them, I remember you guys are like, hey, we need to go to like the Legion. And I'm
going
like,
to the Legion.
And I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking the American VFW and the American Legion or whatever they're referred to. And I'm like, nobody ever goes there to drink. And I remember you convinced me. You're like, no,
you want to go.
Trust me, it's like, it's the next party.
Cheap beers, go to the Legion. And so we gravitated to the Legion. And I don't know, we're probably into the evening now. Everybody is very well lubricated. And there was a group of reserve soldiers who are great guys. I was a reserve soldier. The reserves and the militia structure in Canada is a really proud heritage. It's awesome. There's a lot of really great things. So when I say reserve soldiers, I don't mean that to sound too degrading.
Yeah.
But they're not Team 6 operators. Okay? And they, I think, in their sort of honoring the pride of the day, questioned the guy wearing the uniform that they didn't recognize as a stolen valor uniform. And so about 4 or 5 guys started playing pokey chest with old Magic Mike.
Being like, hold on. I remember I was off by myself talking to a lady, and we were talking to each other, and those 4 guys came over and started calling him out. How dare you wear that uniform in our Legion on this day? Stolen valor, motherfucker, you name it, pokey chest, 50 caliber finger, bang, bang, bang. And they looked at his Navy SEAL trident and started calling him out on it. And it just didn't compute. Like, Mike's brain wasn't computing. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean, like, I'm a stolen valor guy? Like, this is a fucking Navy SEAL trident. And it escalated to the point where I think Mike might be the only person in the history of the SEAL teams to take his trident off his uniform and use it as a ninja star. And threw it at this fucking guy. I just snorted.
Before this all-out brawl kind of kicked off. Because we were trying to downplay it, but we weren't in uniform, so these guys didn't really know sort of our load station. We're like, guys, he's with us, he's good. And like, well, fuck you too. And you know what a bunch of guys fueled on booze on an emotionally charged day looks like. Anyway, Mike used his trident as a ninja star, and won a pretty epic bar fight. I'll give you that.
Here's what I remember. One, we had been drinking since 9 a.m.
Yeah.
This time it's around 9 p.m. And I'm not a drinker. At this point, I was not a drinker. I'd been on a alcohol kick for like 2 years, probably one of the best shape of my life. And when those 4 guys came, there was a hallway that led to the grander room, and then that led to the stairs. I remember that portion of the room became so crowded with people that it was a full-on brawl.
It was a brawl.
I couldn't even lift my hands because some guy had grabbed me and the other guy was punching me in the face. I remember threatening that guy's life. That once my hands are free, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And it went all the way down the stairs, all the way outside the Legion.
It was a good one. Ottawa
police showed up. I remember I had...
Of which half of them are former unit members, so we always kind of err on the side. We always end up on the good side of that, but yeah.
I remember I had like one row of ribbons left, and I took them off, and I threw them. I'm like,
no trident.
You forgot these, you motherfuckers.
And no trident.
I think I said the words America. And
you did.
Then the cops came and ushered.
He actually said America. Like, if you can't make this shit up.
I never found the girl.
What's that?
I never found the girl.
I don't know.
I never found her.
I don't know. She's probably still at the Legion. The next morning, one of the other guys that was in our unit knew the guys that accosted Mike and said, "Do you guys have any idea what you did?" And to their credit, they returned your trident. They found it. They returned your trident with an apology letter. As typical, Canadians are really good at saying sorry. And so with an apology letter, and I will leave this story there, but it's gone on to become a bit of an urban legend between kind of Gold Squadron and One Squadron. And I'll just leave it there to respect the internal cultures of the way that we interact as squadron to squadron. I'll leave it there.
Well, I remember you guys called and you're like, "Hey, we got your trident back. Give us your address. We're going to send it." I did say, I'm like, pound it into your bar.
You guys, we did not give the trident back to you. We have the trident.
Yeah, I said pound it into the bar. Do whatever you want with it.
We have the trident, and I'll leave the story at that.
Yeah, it's. But I've been back to Ottawa multiple times for Remembrance Day. Now that COVID is off, I intend to be back this November, if Canada has not blocked me.
No, you're good. And we have we've got some exciting projects on the go, and I think we're going to do a Remembrance Day skydive in Ottawa.
So so to anyone listening, and to all my Canadian brothers, again, I'm joking. Any Americans, what is the drop zone in Ottawa? November 10th. We'll orchestrate this. Come join.
I mean, we're going to check for weather, but we've got support from the drop zone. It's called Parachute Ottawa, run by Mobility Labs, that is heavily aligned with CPS and the connections that we have on some of the other projects we're working on the Skydive front. I'll front the money for what we need to do to rent the plane. I'll pay for the whole thing. We're going to rent a sky van. We're going to fill it with serving, non-serving members of our community, and our goal would be to do kind of like a sunset jump over the Ottawa River on Remembrance Day prior to going down for the ceremony. But we'll let weather sort of dictate. So 10th, 11th Ottawa, 10th, 11th November, we'll try and pull that off.
Hell yes.
Yeah, man, we'll do it. It'll be great. And we'll have fun doing it.
We will get Fred Williams. I'll get Nick Cush. I'll talk to Andy Stumpf. We'll try to stack the deck with the team.
Yeah.
And I don't want to mention what we got right now.
No, the team on the project team.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring the project team. I'd love to bring some of our serving and veteran operators that want to participate. I know there's a few guys I've been talking to that are super into it. And we'll just go and have a fun skydive. And then go downtown and honor the Remembrance Day traditions and see where it goes. Hopefully not. Who knows? Hopefully not in jail.
We may find the guys that accosted me.
We might find them. I think we should.
I will.
I think we should invite them. So I know your name. So you're invited. Please come and have a bro hug with Magic Mike. And toast a beer and hang out on Remembrance Day this year. It'll be fun.
I will shake the hand 100%. Of the guy who hit me while I was being held multiple times.
100%.
Well, Glenn, these conversations, man, I love it, dude. You are a brother. We've got so much more ahead of us, especially with this project.
We've got an exciting project.
So we end this.
We'll do another podcast on the tail end of it.
Oh, yeah, we will. With the entire team.
With the team. Yeah.
And with Dan Myrick, one writer, director, producer of the Blair Witch Project.
He's going to tell you the project right now.
No, I'm not going to tell you the project. He said don't talk about the project, and he's going to open up Dan Myrick the project. And Christian, who are involved, who I highly admire both of them, but they're in for this project to document it.
It's an audacious, bold. It's an audacious, bold plan that we can pull off.
Have you seen the Blair Witch Project? Have you watched that?
I can't. It makes me like queasy, man. The camera's moving around too much. I can't watch it, but it scared. The part I did scared the shit out of me.
So that's the thing. It's the only film where I was uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
The ability for that guy to and if you didn't know, the Blair Witch Project set a record for lowest production budget, highest grossing film in the history of the world. And
we're going to spend 7 days on an Airbus together.
So is that I'm going to be
uncomfortable as well.
Do we need to watch Dan? Like, is Dan cursed?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, before we close this out, and we will, again, for those listening, November 11th, we will be setting up a jump, open to the public. Of course, everyone,
open to the number of people that can fit in a Skydive.
Yes. Hopefully we can get like a C-130 or something.
Nah, it won't happen.
Not going to happen? Well, no, there's private C-130s. You never know.
I'm not going to fund that much. Yeah, okay, sure. We'll get a C-130.
There we go. Thank you.
We'll go for a Skyvan.
Well, you got to think big. This is the guy who's, you got to go big.
Let's go big.
Okay.
Let's go big.
So we will get information out that at least a month or 2 months before it happens.
Yeah, buddy.
And again, I don't even know if I'm allowed in Canada, so you're going to have to pull.
You're good.
Okay.
I got you.
All right.
I've got a great relationship at the U.S. Embassy right now that you're going to be just fine.
And send my best to Justin Trudeau.
Oh, God, help us all. Oh, man.
I think
he's you know what? I think he's probably a great guy to have a beer with.
I'm sure he is.
I don't think Putin takes him very seriously, put it that way.
All right. Well, we close this with an additional 2 questions. First one.
Here we go. The real questions.
The stump the chump.
What makes you cry?
And usually we don't let our guests leave until we see some tears. We really haven't shown.
You had me earlier. I just was okay at holding it back.
All right. How are you going to measure whether you've lived a good life, an impactful life?
That is the easiest. That is an easier answer than whether or not I'm going to put onions on my cheeseburger. I have 3 beautiful blonde girls in my life, and if they look at me and say, I'm proud of you, fucking mic drop, I'm out.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think 2 out of 3 are, I think I got 2 out of 3 right now. So let's, we'll see where it goes. But
that's a good one, man.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What are those 1 to 3 key tenets, those non-negotiables that you live your life by, that have led to your success more or less?
They've come about very recently. Can that work?
That is actually interesting.
It's been a relatively recent revelation. And I kind of knew you were going to ask this, so I've thought about it a little bit, but then as I thought about it, it came on very quickly. Think big. Like, think big, and then think big, and then think fucking bigger. And 100x where you think you're going to go. And you and I have had these discussions this week, and we've...
Yeah, dude, and for the audience, you think big?
I think big.
Even my wife, we all had dinner. It was the first time you guys met. She's like, you need to think like Glenn. And I'm like, I'm just not at that level, dude.
No, I think big. And touch wood, we're kind of making that happen, and it's really humbling to see that. Like, but think big. And then when you think you're big, go 10x what you think you're thinking. The second one is just tell the truth, man. Like, lies are toxic, whether they're little white lies or big things. Like, just tell the fucking truth in life. And kind of like leading with love, you can't go wrong. You'll never be wrong if you tell the truth.
Hey, hold on. And one thing I've always said this, people have said, hey, well, how do you lead in the military? And I've said, because maybe we've had this conversation, is we lead through love. And I talk about accountability.
Yeah.
And like actually holding your kids accountable is the highest form of compassion that there is, because you want them to become competent, good human beings that contribute to society, which means you have to teach them and hold them accountable.
Yeah. I think accountability, and I've failed on accountability so many times.
Self-accountability as well.
Yeah, self-accountability, like, And it adds up. You can't go wrong. I've actually not failed on accountability, to be honest with you.
Never.
Come on. Let's
watch our words here.
I've been pretty good at taking responsibility for my actions.
You're talking about self-accountability.
Good or bad.
Okay.
Good or bad. But there has been many times where I've checked my own accountability and lacked integrity. What's the definition of integrity? Like doing what's right when no one's around? Something like that?
Yes.
So I have not checked myself at times when I should have. But telling the truth, even the truth to yourself, looking yourself in the mirror and calling it as you see it, that's powerful. And it's hurtful, and it sucks. Or it can suck. But do it. It's fucking powerful. Sorry, can we swear on this podcast? We did the one before, and I said fuck once, and Mike got mad.
Well, it was a clean podcast up to that point, and then Apple slapped it with I forget what the title is explicit.
I don't know.
All because a Canadian came on and just swore.
Anyway, we'll go to the third.
So first off, the first one was think big, go big.
Think big, go big. Tell the truth.
And third?
This is the catch-all. Don't be a dick. Just don't be a dickhead. I think if you do any combination of 2 and 3, you're good to go. Because you can look someone in the eye, and maybe counter to Sammy Hagar, who...
I said this.
No, but I'm like, Mike, I'm going to fuck you right now. I'm not lying. I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not lying. I'm not deceiving you. You don't like the outcome. But
I'm telling you to your face.
But I'm telling you to your face. And I'm being open and direct and upfront about what's happening. And it gives you the opportunity then to at least give a counter. As opposed to, where do you fuck someone? By going around, hitting them on the flank, being devious, whatever the case may be. If you look someone in the eye and you tell them the truth, I never said the message has to be roses, but it has to be honest. And if you're honest with people, you can't go wrong. I don't think you can go wrong.
That has to be one of the most brutally honest answers thus far. And I love your analogy of special operations planning. The situation changed. I intended for this, for all of us to move forward.
Yep.
But now...
Situation changed.
Yeah.
And every time we do something, and this is, my organization went into Afghanistan, and we had a couple of casualties, but they weren't combat-related casualties. We never lost an operator, a supporter, or a specialist on a target. There's a million horseshoes shoved up our ass as to why that didn't happen. But we also planned with such precision and detail that we were able to do that. And some of that was just because we were constantly reevaluating, has the situation changed? And hey, I thought I was going in on 20 guys. We're going in on 200 guys. Are we going to abort? Fuck no. Situations change. Let's change the plan on the fly. Have everybody briefed up on it. Good. This is the truth. This is going to suck. This is going to hurt, but we're going to do it. Go. Everyone respects it. It's very hard to disrespect the truth. You don't have to like it, but it's very hard to disrespect the truth. And this has taken me a lot of scars to learn that. Time is the greatest mentor of all of us. The decision-making process between when I was 20 and now is so vastly different. And I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. No,
3 months ago.
No, God,
2 months ago. 1 month ago. Things change. Well, Glenn, dude,
this has been great.
It's been fun.
This is like driving to brunch this morning. This is the conversations.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
And I disagree with you on a lot. Our conversations get intense. But no, I've always appreciated you as a business mentor. One, because you've absolutely crushed it with the defense fund, ONE9 in Canada.
We're getting there.
You've pulled in some players, dude.
I have some great partners. I have some unbelievable capital partners. We've made some investments in some companies, both Canadian and American, that are crushing it. I mean, we just did one of our companies, a Salt Lake City company. I was actually talking to you about what they've been able to discover with the most powerful algorithm that is going to be one of the more powerful national security tools going forward as we counter a rising China and Russia. We just did a 5x return on our investment. They just closed a $45 million financing, and they are a rocket ship. And we're just happy to be along for the ride with some of the U.S.'s most sophisticated investors. And read the press release. It's all open source, but I look at myself in the mirror and I find myself being invited into these deals, and I'm like, you do know, like, I'm the redheaded stepchild from Canada, right? And they're like, yep, that's why we want you. Let's go. I'm like, all right, let's fucking go.
Well, to steal a quote from a guy I highly respect, Dave Cooper, which I know you know that name.
Yep.
SEAL Master Chief, I'll leave it at that. He once said, it's amazing what we can do when we're a team. Canada, U.S., British, Australia, New Zealand, France. It doesn't matter.
I'll just plug, if you give me 2 minutes, the venture capital industry that I'm involved in. I'm one of one in Canada. I'm working with some of the best venture capitalists and investors in the U.S., and it is a team sport. And our collective national security is a team sport. And the model of an investment coming together replicates a CJ SOTF, which for listeners is a combined joint special operations task force. Venture capital and special operations are identical, man, in terms of how you deploy resources in high-risk, high-reward environments. It's identical. And I'm super humble and grateful to be investing and partnering with some really heavy hitters that are doing some really cool stuff, and companies that are just blowing my mind. I mean, it's just a bunch of really smart people thinking shit up, and then they need a knuckle dragger like me to kind of help guide them in areas that they don't need, and it's really humbling. And I wake up every morning like on fire and passionate about what we're building.
There's a need, and I know I thank you personally for what you're doing, as well as those venture capitalists, but Glenn Cowan, folks, will drop all his information. And for all of you, thank you for joining the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast. We'll be back.